So there were 3 people at the crime scene. Let's get a closer look at them. Alima is the victim, fortunately not of homicide, but an attempted homicide. She can't testify. At the moment, the girl is in a coma. Andre is Alina's husband. The couple is getting divorced, and it is this person who is the lead suspect. He had the gun, which he allegedly used to shoot the victim with, in his hands. Nikita is the couple's neighbor and the main witness in this case. He called the police as he happened to be at the crime scene. But how exactly did he end up there? The couple had been arguing a lot recently. All the neighbors had got used to the noise. The couple could not reach an agreement on the division of property, but that day something went completely wrong. This shot was heard by Nikita in his living room 1 floor below. He raced to rescue the victim. The door to the apartment was not locked, but on the bedroom floor, he saw the lady. Considering that she was dead, he called the police. But coming back from the kitchen, he saw a gun aimed at him. The weapon was in the hands of Alina's husband. Apparently, before that, he was hiding. Andre didn't fire only because he didn't have the time, because at that very moment, the police arrived in the apartment. Well, quite realistic testimony. So Andre had a motive to commit the crime, but even prime suspects will have the right to give testimony. In the apartment of his soon-to-be former wife, Andre came with the documents for the division of property. He knew the conversation would be a difficult one, but he wasn't ready for what he saw. And yet Alina is alive. Her pulse is weak, but she has pulse. Suddenly from the kitchen, Andre hears some rustling. Panicking, he grabs the gun lying next to him. But when the person shows himself, Andre realizes that he is unarmed and he knows him. This is a neighbor from one of the nearby flats. Maybe it was him who shot, or had someone else been to the apartment? Yes, 2 different versions. How should we understand which of these men is telling the truth? And then even both testimonies still do not solve the case. We need evidence, and we are yet to get it. Ivan Sergeyevich, well, here we are at the crime scene. What do you start with?
Inspection of the scene begins with the fact that we must put on a special uniform.
Yeah.
Put on shoe covers and gloves. That's what we are going to do now.
Is this all so as not to bring our microparticles here from the street?
Yes, sure.
Ivan Larionov is a police major, forensic expert. For more than 20 years, the crime scene has been his main place of work. The picture is really depressing in general.
Yes.
But you're used to this, aren't you?
This is the tip of the iceberg. What we see with our eyes is called visible traces of a crime. But in addition to visible traces, we have poorly visible and invisible ones.
First, the expert records the setting, and only then begins examining the scene.
Well, we see only 2 objects, don't we? Here is the gun. Blood. Yes, a blood stain. Splashes of blood. Here, when we light up the floor, that is, with the usual lighting,
Yeah.
which we use on the ceiling, we also see what we see. But when we look under the backlighting,
It's completely different.
yes, we see that there are a huge number of small objects on our floor.
Wow. It just seemed absolutely clean. But there I see some hair or wool. There's some kind of dust there too.
Over there, there's allegedly a fabric fiber.
It's usually photographers who use backlight. Under it, things look better, as if separate from the background. Well, we find our evidence. Look, unbelievable. And this all could have gone unnoticed. Even the hair.
Footprints. Overlapping. Here, for example, is a fragment of a shoe print.
Yeah. Wow, such a simple, it would seem, technique.
Yes.
And working so well.
Yes.
Then there comes the magic suitcase. It contains more than 10 kilograms of special equipment, and every expert has his personal forensic suitcase.
Though we have 5 minutes to get ready, well, to set off for the crime scene, 20 minutes to get there. That is, we're almost like firefighters. Therefore, you must have what you might need prepared in advance and at hand. Get the tweezers. Get the envelope out, the packet.
You mean that's the only way to do it? With tweezers and very carefully?
In order not to damage. This is called a pharmacy envelope.
Pharmacy?
That's how they used to package free-flowing drugs in pharmacies.
Yeah.
Since then, it's been called a pharmacy envelope. There is a whole complex of traces left on the weapon which the man shot with. It's DNA.
Yeah.
It's sweat and grease deposits. Then fingerprints. These are fingerprints. Then there are traces of the shot.
And all this are the microparticles which are very interesting to us.
Yes.
Is it all somewhere there?
Yes, somewhere there.
To determine what exactly is left on the weapon, the gun is to be sent to the laboratory. And for this, it is neatly packed. And, by the way, they use a cardboard box here. No plastic bags, unlike in movies.
When you, for example, putting any biological substance in a bag, any biological substance, it dies. That is, cells, they won't be suitable for research anymore.
Yeah.
Therefore, any packaging we use is air permeable.
Cardboard is the best package.
Cardboard paper.
Yeah.
But here, we need cardboard to stabilize this object on the cardboard.
The weapon is secured with the help of holes and, you won't believe it, a usual thread. Well, you are like Cinderella's, always with a thread and a needle.
That's necessary.
Why are there so many myths then, and how do you tolerate it? Why do they show it so completely different on movies?
In order to get the viewer interested, he should be entertained. Our work is laborious, sometimes even boring, but we must help the investigation to restore the picture of what happened, as if to run the film backwards, using these traces here. Therefore, this, I believe, is a very interesting profession.
Will the experts be able to restore the true picture of the crime and find out who shot Alina? To begin with, the criminalist gets fingerprints from everyone who was present at the crime scene, with a roller and special fingerprint ink.
Fingerprint ink is very similar to printing ink. It is rolled out onto a thin layer. This is very important to roll it into a thin layer. Please, your right hand.
And why?
And the ink should not block the gaps between ridge patterns on a finger.
Aha, that is, if there's a little more or a little less of ink, it won't work.
Yes, and we will get a black spot.
These patterns, which are formed during the 3rd month in the womb of the mother, protrude only for 1/10 of a millimeter, 100 microns, and they are individual and don't change throughout life. Is it true that there are criminals who try to clean up, well, fingerprints? Is it an effective method?
No.
No?
For one simple reason, any interference, any changes in the ridge pattern are an additional, even better identifying feature.
In addition to usual one-finger prints, experts collect control prints, too. And why do you need such a projection, a vertical print of the thumb?
These are control fingerprints. Sometimes, often, thumbs have these distal zones. Well, here, those that are on the edge of the ridge pattern. And here, they are clearly shown.
And even palm prints for full coverage. That's how fingerprints are collected. Beautiful. In just the same way, Ivan Larionov makes fingerprint cards on both men, Andrei and Nikita. In addition, we seize the clothes of those present at the crime scene. Why? You will find out very soon. There are 3 basic ridge patterns. In fact, an arch, a loop, and a whorl. But even prints with the same type of pattern have their own particular characteristics. For example, beginning and ending, a delta and a fork of papillary lines, an island, a bridge, a hook. In general, there are more than 70 such characteristics, and they are different even for identical twins. And the probability of a full match by calculations is 1 chance at, well, in general, you see, this number with 57 digits is called an octodecillion, but as a result, for identification, as we already know, there must be at least 12 such particular characteristics that match.
Here you are. Well, yes, if we take this particular characteristic on the print, here it is on the print, and then we begin to count and look for another particular characteristic. And here it also matches, and so on.
This is exactly what happens. The expert sits in front of the screen and looks at the card and at the fingerprint that was found, again at the card and again at the fingerprint. And all this manually, with your eyes.
All this is done manually.
And there's no magic system where you download all these fingerprints and in 30 seconds you have a match found?
No.
For all the residents of Russia.
There's no magic system. The expert always examines them with his eyes.
Examine with your eyes, they say here, not estimate by eye. Anastasia has found important evidence.
This fingerprint is taken from the weapon, from the trigger, and it matches with the first suspect's fingerprint.
Yeah? And what finger is it?
This is the index finger.
Well, yes, all.
Of the right hand.
Everything is logical. Well, then in that case, perhaps we don't suspect him for anything? There were no other clear fingerprints found on the weapon. Dactyloscopy confirmed the fact that the weapon was in the hands of Andrei and lifted suspicions from the witness Nikita at the same time. But this is only the first piece of evidence, and now we'll turn to other invisible evidence. These 3 packets contain the clothes of all the people who were at the scene: Alina's jumper, Nikita's shirt, and Andrei's t-shirt. And these seemingly silent witnesses can tell us a lot. Here's the main thing, as well as with all other microparticles, is to have a closer look. With the help of a magnifying glass, experts are looking at the finest microfibers, unusual for the clothes themselves, and on finding, they carefully remove them and attach them to a sticky tape. Now this is material evidence. They also take a small piece of each piece of clothing. This is a comparative sample. And then, of course, they study all these under a microscope, and here it becomes clear. The finest fibers of fabrics live in their own separate world.
The garment of the victim is made of red polyester fibers.
So they are red, this I can see. And why are they polyester?
Look, we have such a special compensator. Using it, we can put into the slot and set the interference color of our fiber.
All fibers are anisotropic. That is, they are inhomogeneous and refract light differently. Here, for example, Andrei's blue cotton t-shirt and Nikita's white synthetic shirt. Based on the inference of light scattering, experts even know the composition of the fabrics without chemical analysis. And by comparing the morphology of the microfibers detected with the samples withdrawn, they can determine their identity. On Alita's sweater, experts have found fibers from both Andrei's t-shirt and, surprisingly, Nikki's white shirt. And on Andrei's blue t-shirt, too, they have found fibers from the jumper and the white shirt. But
on the white shirt, we haven't found blue fibers. We can conclude that the man who was wearing the white shirt, he was initially at the crime scene, and the one who was wearing a blue t-shirt, he appeared on the crime scene later.
listen, here it is, a connecting thread. It goes and goes.
Yes.
And leads us somewhere, doesn't it?
Yes.
So then Nikita at least doesn't say everything. After all, he claimed that he hadn't approached Alina. That's why he thought that she was dead and called the police and not an ambulance. But how then did the white microfibers happen to be on Alita's jumper and then, bang, got onto Andrei's t-shirt? It means that men did not contact and Nikita could only have received the fibers from the victim. The case gets more complicated. But at least now we have doubts about Nikita, and doubts are better than nothing. But what exactly is this young man hiding? Next microscopic evidence will answer this question. How do we know who did the shooting? Woo! We shot 2 birds with 1 stone. We had fun, and the experts criminalists got a blind experiment. So we've made your life more complicated, haven't we?
Very much so.
And by the way, we were sincerely surprised by the result. Next, why gunpowder has nothing to do with shot residue. Why ordinary dust is so dangerous. there's a whole world.
Yes, it all consists of various particles.
And what does the cleanest place in Moscow look like? And also, the microworld solves the crime. Next in the documentary. How do you know who fired the guns? And is it possible to understand which gun exactly he fired? We have prepared an experiment. 3 people, Artyom, Anastasia, and me. So, what are we waiting for? Of course, the person who's going to shoot is me. I can't miss a chance to shoot a service weapon for the first time in my life. This is a Glock 17. Anastasia is an instructor. She's going to shoot too, but with a more serious caliber gun. This is a Glock 35. Artyom today is unlucky. He's not going to shoot today. Well, shall we try? Fire! This is something. But we are here, of course, gathered not just to shoot, but to find out whether our experts will be able to understand which of us has shot and who's been left without entertainment. Experts trying to understand this are from the staff of the Forensic Center of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia. Tatiana, nice to see you. And you haven't seen which of us actually fired, have you?
Of course I haven't.
But you can find out.
I think this won't be a problem.
Using what?
We'll take the gunshot residue from you now. These are microscopic particles, which are the result of decomposition of the chamber contents. When a shot is fired, they are deposited on you in your direction because of the mechanism of weapons.
So, what happens at the time of the shot? The trigger, coupled with the striker, produces a release. The firing pin strikes the chambered cartridge. The chambered cartridge contains a rattling mixture, antimony as a combustion stabilizer, potassium chloride or barium nitrate to supply the reaction with oxygen, and, most importantly, mercuric fulminate. This is the substance that explodes on impact. A stream of flame bursts through the ignition hole and ignites the gunpowder. Modern smokeless gunpowder consists of nitrocellulose with the addition of nitroglycerin. It takes gunpowder 12/10,000ths of a second to burn out, expanding in volume more than 1,000 times and forming about 3 liters of gases, whose temperature is 2,500 Celsius. This energy expands the shell and pushes the bullet out at a speed of 350 meters per second. The lead bullet, rotating along the barrel cuts, advances to the muzzle with ever-increasing speed, and a shot. An empty shell with a part of the hot gases is thrown out of the shutter.
Shooting a firearm creates a very aggressive environment. That is, it's high temperature, high pressure.
It is Ilya Afanasyev who will analyze the samples obtained in the experiment, and you will be surprised. Gunshot residue substances have nothing to do with gunpowder.
Combustion of gunpowder is organic nitrocellulose. Almost nothing remains from it. Carbon. Well, there are some nitrates that are difficult to determine, and it's not possible to do their analysis fast.
So you don't actually look for traces of gunpowder?
No, we are looking for...
It's a myth?
Yes, we are only looking for gunshot residue, mercury, lead, antimony, barium, well, tin too.
But to find them, you need to collect samples correctly to start with.
First of all, hands as the most contaminated object. A sample is a small aluminum stage for electron microscopy, which is covered with a spectrally clean 2-sided adhesive tape.
During 1 minute, Tatiana touches my palm 150 times.
What's happening now is, let's say, saturation of the sticky layer. I've collected from you everything I needed, and at this moment, the sample becomes representative.
The palm, then the back, and then the left hand.
We deal with both right-handed and left-handed people.
And again, both sides. Experts assure us that this way they will know me like the palms of their hands.
Because in fact, we find everything. The sample contains particles of your skin and some particles that have settled on your hands.
But it's not limited to the hands.
We also take the sample from the face, because the face is also very representative. In addition, the hair allows you to keep the gunshot residue substances longer.
Yeah, I want to ask you then, is it easier with bearded criminals?
It is. That's all.
You finished?
Yes, we have.
Yeah? Well, now then, it's up to the other participants, well, or accomplices.
We'll see.
Tatiana takes the same 5 samples from Anastasia and Artyom. We all hide under numbers so that samples are impersonal for objectivity. I have number 3, Anastasia has 1, and Artyom's got 2. After half an hour, everything is ready. So, will the experts be able to solve the puzzle? So all of our samples are in the Forensic Science Center in the laboratory of the Ultimate Composition on the desk of Ilya Afanasyev, but not for long. He accurately and in certain order puts the stages with adhesive tape on the substrate of the electron microscope. In this laboratory, it is combined with an X-ray fluorescent analyzer. As soon as the samples are inside, a vacuum is created in the chamber, and the stages with samples are bombarded with X-rays. Because of this, the particles of metals in the samples begin to emit secondary radiation. Since atoms of different elements emit photons with strictly defined energies, measuring these energies, it is possible to determine what and how much of it is contained in each sample. That is, to make a qualitative and quantitative analysis. And the quantity, I'll tell you, is just horrible.
In total, we found about 30,000 particles on the objects which we've analyzed.
30,000 particles.
Yes, our team spent a lot of time preparing the filming. Our team spent a lot of time preparing the filming of all this test shooting.
So we've made your life more complicated, haven't we?
Actually, yes, very much so. This is a disguise that says, yes, guys, everyone seems to be involved. Then we can look at the characteristic particles.
Indicative means, first, particles of the chamber contents. Do you remember what this detonator consists of? Antimony, barium, mercury, and microscopic shavings from the abrasion of the bullet and the barrel that is lead. These are the gunshot residue particles.
On the other hand, it is possible to falsify. It is possible, as in from the point of view of the criminal, to try to shake out the cartridge, some substances of the gunshot residue and say, this man was shooting. But then there will only be particles that are characteristic of the cartridge case, but not for the gunshot residue. And here there are questions of more subtle research.
The expert manually puts the constraint. We are looking only for heavy chemical elements inherent in the fulminate cap. And the picture changes right before our eyes.
What do we see? The first man definitely made a shot because he had gunshot residue on all surfaces of the hands and on the head. The second, he did not shoot because he didn't have these particles either on the palms or on the back side of his hands, only on the hair. Individual particles. Their number is much smaller. The third one, the same thing. He did shoot.
Yeah.
That is, it's already there. We can differentiate them.
Well, you've managed to do it.
Have we? Well, so modern science helps a lot.
Now the electron microscope joins the team. With its help, we will see the invisible micron gunshot residue firsthand. Here they are, these particles. Some are like molten lava. These were formed in the barrel channel at the maximum temperature, and these regular forms arose at the exit from the barrel in the so-called steam phase of the shot. A whole planet.
Yes, and here, please note that the morphology of the surfaces is different. If here we have round ones, then there it is already a crystalline phase.
So it's quite possible that they are from different firearms.
Yes, these were like different sources.
Double hit. The experts have not only established which of us 3 fired a gun, but also realized that the 2 men fired from different weapons, and all thanks to the smallest gunshot residue and very powerful equipment. Now we can find out which of our suspects shot Alina. The forensic expert Ivan Larionov makes swabs from suspects. This technique is still more common than stages with sticky tape, but the idea is the same. The gauze swab, soaked in alcohol, collects the same gunshot residue. So, who pulled the trigger?
We found gunshot residue on both suspects. On, well, the neighbor and the husband. Here.
Yeah, things are getting worse and worse. The case seems all the more complicated. Or we still can get to the truth. Let's go back to the shooting gallery. There is one secret here. Now I'll give the gun which I shot to Artyom. But no, he isn't going to shoot it. He's only going to hold it in his hands for a few seconds. Put the gun, Artyom, and go to have the second swab. And we'll see what our experts will learn this time. The same 5 samples, they are all number 4, and the same scrupulous analysis in the laboratory, and
The 4th sample, it says that there's a large number of particles on the palm part, but there are fewer particles on the back part, and less particles compared to those who shot. And on the back, he has almost none of them. Most likely, he may have taken the gun into his hand and fiddled with it.
a 100% hit, and this despite the fact that we, so it turned out, did everything to complicate the task for the experts. Ilya Avanasyev does the same refining analysis with the swabs of both participants of the crime, and here the answer is direct, like a shot.
The husband has the gunshot residue on the palms. That is, he took the weapon, but he did not shoot it, unlike the neighbor, who has the gunshot residue on his palms, as well as on the backside of his hands, and in fact, on his hair and on his face. That is, he used the gun.
So, the husband just held the gun that was at the crime scene.
Well, yes,
Did the neighbor shoot?
it turns out so.
Well, from the second suspect, Nikita has passed to the rank of the prime one. The investigation has not written off Andrei either. We need to find a possible motive for the neighbor. After all, Alina's husband had quite a strong motive. We'll return to this later. But the work of Ilya Afanasyev has already radically changed the situation in our case.
In life, there are many cases when such a differentiation, it in fact decides the fate of a person. There was an incident with the use of firearms on the street. A casual passerby saw this business, saw a gun. If it was thrown there, he could take it to look at it. And then the situation arises that any verification shows that this person is contaminated with the gunshot residue. He has it on his hands. This is a ready-made convict. As a matter of fact, guilty without guilt. And here we are looking for those particles that can unequivocally say about the relation of a person to a firearm. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Speaking of needles, I've decided to give the experts some common things. Among other things, some dust from my home, my hair, and my fingernail. I want to see the world with the maximum magnification. Half an hour's work, and are you ready to be surprised? Let's start with a thread and a needle.
Clear.
It's stunningly beautiful. I don't even know how I was putting it there because now it looks like a rope. This is my cut nail, yeah, and this is the hair. And look at the cut, it is uneven. Because of the elasticity, even the sharpest scissors don't actually cut it off, only crushing the place of the cutoff. Even plain paper looks interesting under the microscope. You can see the picture of different wood or the growth line of precious stones. This is for crystals, like fingerprints for a person. And this is also a crystal, but it's ordinary table salt. And guess what? It's a butterfly's wing, but this is actually pollen. And by the way, it's from these jungles. And they are just my home dust. A whole world.
Yes, here, it's all of various particles. It is pollen of some plants. The dust is of technogenic origin. The same concrete, construction dust. Metal particles can cling to them. That is, they brought their story to your home. If you analyze them, you can probably say for sure in which area of Moscow you collected it.
Who is guilty of committing a homicide attempt? The microparticles have already helped us collect a lot of evidence against Nikita, the initially innocent neighbor. But what was the motive for the crime?
I'll start to examine the first glass, which you will have emptied the liquid from. And in the meantime, you will empty the second glass, okay?
Okay, deal. In the kitchen, we found 2 glasses of wine. This is what I'm carefully removing from the glasses with a syringe so as not to disrupt the integrity of the fingerprints.
Because the fingerprint left on the glass can be crucial for the proving process.
As soon as the glass is empty, Ivan Larionov is armed with a special brush.
This is fiberglass. These are the finest threads that have a cavity inside. It's like microtubules.
Due to this, particles of fingerprinting powder are easily caught onto the brush, and the same easily transferred from it to the surface of the glass.
They simply interact with the sweat and grease deposits and sort of get hooked on it.
As a result, invisible prints appear on the glass like a frosty pattern on a winter window. You have only to accurately transfer these powder prints to a fingerprint film. All 3 to one film?
It's important from the point of view that these fingers probably participated in the action together, didn't they? It's necessary to do so.
These fingerprints, of course, also fall into the hands and under the gaze of Anastasia. Here I don't understand how.
Well, here there's, yes, an overlap. Well, here is the fingerprint.
So this is this long loop, isn't it?
Yes, this one is the loop. Well, here's the middle finger on the right hand, and the fingerprint on the glass is left by the second suspect.
So Nikita wasn't present just at the crime scene, but also spent some time there, although he claimed that he had nothing to do with the victim. Is Nikita trying to darken it? We'll learn in the dark. Well, that is, sometimes you have to dig into dirty underwear.
Yes, sometimes.
Literally.
It is necessary. Here we can find many different traces of human activity, biological, basically traces.
We're going to look for traces using ultraviolet, but again, completely different from what it looks like in the movies.
Ultraviolet is harmful for any biological objects. Therefore, we light a little, and when we see a fluorescent object, then we will stop, but only for 3 seconds. Otherwise, it won't be suitable for research, and we'll take the light to another side. Here, stop.
How do you notice it, huh? We've noticed a small speck. Its origin is yet to be established, but for now we record it with a camera, and now we begin examining the pillows with a simple backlight.
Yes, only we call it oblique light. Well, here it's much more interesting. Can you see?
Yeah.
1 hair, 2 hairs.
We collect the hairs with the help of the tweezers and the pharmacy's envelope, which we've already seen. This find can be very promising.
Moreover, it's interesting because of the possibility to find DNA in the hair.
Yeah.
That is, if we find these cells there, then we can identify the person with accuracy high enough.
Using a special swab, the expert collects buccal epithelium cells of the suspects. In other words, cells of the inner side of the cheek. They are large and very viable, the ideal material for a genetic laboratory. This DNA laboratory carries out 1/5 of all biological research in the internal affairs system of Russia. Every year, hundreds of persons involved in crimes are identified here. Lubov, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I brought you our DNA samples. Well, not ours, of course, but of the 2 suspects. Here are 2 samples. And here's the hair we found on the pillow. And we need to understand which of the suspects it belongs to.
Yeah,
Yes, can you do it?
we'll try.
It is impossible to extract DNA from the hair itself. Like nails, it is dead tissue that doesn't contain genetic information, and therefore the expert first looks at the sample under a microscope. And here they are, at the base of the hair, semi-transparent living cells. We're lucky.
We're taking a test tube and cut the tip of the hair, which has vaginal tunic on it.
Aha, that is, you don't even need it at all.
Of course not.
The swabs are placed in other test tubes, which are then filled with distilled water. Then they are extracted in a special apparatus. But then the most difficult thing begins, DNA extraction. Well, how do you extract DNA? We can see this, can't we?
Unfortunately, you won't be able to because members of the public are not allowed into the room where DNA is extracted.
Why?
Because people can leave their DNA and, God forbid, it can find its way into a test tube, and thus the person can become an accomplice in a crime. And nobody wants this.
For the first time in our life, we'll have to film through the glass. Now, Lubov is holding a lysis buffer to the test tubes, which will destroy the cells and release DNA. It will be cleaned and sequenced. That is, a special device, a sequenator, will determine a unique sequence of nucleotides. The sequence of nucleotides is a gene. It is always located in a specific place of the chromosome. The exact address is called the locus. For all people, it is the same. For example, one of the genes responsible for eye color is always there, but the color of the eye can be different. It depends on alleles, that is, gene variants in this place, and the variants dictate a different sequence of nucleotides. As a result of examination, we have these maps. The alphabetic code here denotes loci with curves denoting the nucleotide sequences, alleles. The first map is of Andre, the second one is of Nikita, and the third one is the hair we found. And it copies Nikita's DNA precisely. The probability of identification by 16 loci is 7 per 1019, which is 10 times more than the population of the Earth. That is, this is 100% Nikita's hair. Thanks to microscopic evidence, we have solved this crime. Nikita and Alina had an affair. Young people had been meeting secretly for a long time. Actually, that's why Alina got divorced from her husband. But Nikita wasn't going to get divorced from his wife. Arguments and threats to tell his wife about everything drove Nikita over the edge. Knowing where Andrei's traumatic gun was kept in the house, he used the weapon to rid himself of the obtrusive lover, naively believing that there would be no connection between him and the crime. But even having removed his fingerprints from the weapon, he left too many, albeit almost invisible, traces. Of course, this is a crime dramatization, and the participants are actors. And yet I'm very glad that I had the honor to meet the people who face real crimes and who solve these real crimes. Sometimes day and night working at the crime scene, and sometimes under heavy rain.
Anyway, you try to get the best of yourself, because you cannot allow yourself to work worse than you can work. Because, well, we must always understand, no matter how banal and loud these words might seem, that the results of our work determines the fates of people. If we really prove the guilt of the guilty, it will be fair. It will be a good, the right thing to do, yes.
Or those who examine thousands of microscopic pieces of evidence day and night.
That is, well, I'm actually a fan of electron microscopy.
So you spend most of the time in the micro world.
Yes. And then you come out here and you think, my God, if they were only all small.
All the experts taking part in this documentary are, without exaggeration, heroes of the almost invisible front. And thanks to meeting them, I understood. If every crime leaves a trace, then those who do everything possible to solve this crime leave a trace too. A trace that is big and will be kept in our hearts.